Hey everybody, welcome to the News-Herald's Walking Dead recaps. I'm David Komer.
I'm Shane Preston.
And we're going to take you through to the rest of the season and hopefully beyond. Just kind of recapping the show, talking about what we think, what we're looking forward to. Shane, we just saw the premiere of the second half of season 3.
Yes.
And what was your gut feeling?
I was very interested going in to see how they were going to tie up a few things from when they last left us. Merle and Daryl. Last time we saw them, they were about to square off. They were held in the middle of a big ring of an angry mob over at Woodbury with the one-eyed governor kind of running things. One thing that did kind of stick out was how quickly that was resolved. They did kind of show their hand in the previews leading up to the second half of the season with Daryl talking to Rick. So you knew it wasn't going to last long. I thought maybe the first episode would be devoted to them getting out. Turns out it was the first 2 minutes.
Right, they could have done a little more with that. Although, we've seen before that the Woodbury crew are basically a bunch of weekend warriors with rifles. And so, you have this tactical, assault basically with a handful of people, but with flash bombs and smoke grenades. And I think you're, you're going to overtake them rather quickly.
Yes.
Plus, they have the element of surprise. But I do agree it would have been nice to see it drawn out a little more. Mm-hmm. Plus, I would like to have seen Merle's plan. They had Merle obviously pitted against Daryl, and when he's like, just follow my lead. Well, what lead do you have when you've got the walkers on sticks around you,
right,
and you've got an angry mob? But hey, the tagline for this season is an eye for an eye.
Okay.
So,
makes you think that someone else might be losing an eye. But it was kind of funny, that one scene in particular where he goes, just follow my lead, and then the next thing you know, as the walkers are brought in, they're back to back. So they didn't really trick anyone with that. But that being said, you can look past it. It was an exciting beginning to the episode.
Kind of reminds me of the whole false bravado of that seminal 80s film, Tango and Cash. I believe they're being tortured in the jail cell for crimes they didn't commit. And I believe Gabriel Cash, played by Kurt Russell, is saying, I've got everything under control, just where we want them. That might be before or after they get electrocuted,
right,
by that Asian bad guy. But anyways, of Lethal Weapon fame. But anyways, so too much crazy stuff. But moving forward, though, we did get to see Andrea's place with Woodbury. Obviously, the governor did have to kind of come out and reveal that they had Glenn and Maggie there.
Yes.
And you see Glenn's further kind of evolution.
MVP of the episode.
Yeah.
We'll put it this way: this is 2 consecutive episodes where he has the zombie kill of the episode when he goes. He shows that he was the type to go around and cause anarchy during Halloween and smash pumpkins all over people's front porches and stuff with what he did to the zombie that surprised him out of the truck. He was the MVP of the episode, and the evolution of his character has been very impressive. Whether it be how angry he was when he initially sees Merle for the first time since he took the beating in his holding cell, and even getting into it with Rick, not backing down, not being the quiet little guy who goes on runs and stuff anymore. He's actually having a bit of a voice now, and I'm very interested to see where he goes, because the preview leading up to next week, he's really out to get the governor at this point. He's
kind of the ringleader at this point.
He's the one with the most consistent head on his shoulders. It's weird to think that he would be the one of the aggressors that. I don't know. I mean, who would you trust to make a decision right now, him or Rick? and him fighting back with Rick and speaking up against him was very refreshing to me.
But what was interesting to me is if you happen to catch The Talking Dead with Chris Hardwick, which is really good, the hour-long show of kind of discussion afterwards, Glenn, the actor who's Stephen Young, who plays him, was kind of saying that, basically Glenn is acting out of kind of like young kind of, making kind of rash decisions based on revenge, kind of based on his youth. It almost makes me feel that it's not going to end well for him.
Yeah.
Just because he is kind of going off half-cocked. But, you did mention one thing with Rick. We did get to see further mental decay. As far as, granted, everything he'd been through, almost everyone must have some sort of PTSD at this point.
Yes.
The post-traumatic stress. And I think we're seeing the kind of the decay of Rick in that form. Where he just basically needs some help and just to chill out for a while. But, and Glenn is the one character who's actually seen flashes of this prior, when Rick went on his killing spree, clearing out that whole section of the jail.
Well, him and Herschel.
Well, that's true.
Because Herschel was there for the phone calls and everything like
right.
that. And the one thing that they could have done that I'm glad they didn't, once the phone call thing kind of ran its course, and he spoke with Lori at the end of it, and then all of a sudden he got his stuff together, they could have just stopped it there and have him go back to being normal Rick. I'm glad they didn't, because they gave you a teaser at the end of the first half of the season when you see Shane, where he imagines it's Shane and he shoots him. That kind of gives you a glimpse that maybe he's not over it. And then when he's holding the baby at this one before a commercial break, he starts losing it a little bit then. And then obviously we can only assume to be Lori up at the top of that thing.
She's got her mother's eyes, and her daddy's face looks just like Shane. Yeah, you could see he was not.
Yes.
He was not really taking to the baby, and but also, that's what I kind of read into it. But at the same time, though, you've got a kid that he's basically had about 2 minutes with, or less this whole time.
Yeah.
Because he's been kind of out doing stuff. So that's interesting. Just. What's your take on the foursome that's currently inside the jail? That Tyreese and Sasha and the two white guys who are kind of getting some anarchy on, kind of thinking maybe they should take the guns. And what's your take on that?
The fact that we don't even know enough about the two white guys to say their names make me think that they're not going to last very long. I think whether or not they are accepted, they're going to try a little bit of a coup, which is what they referenced when they were outside trying to bury their dead. I don't see them lasting very long.
Right. Now, unless Sasha and Tyreese play an active role in putting them down, that could really make it hard for them to kind of join the group if, these are people they've been hanging with all this time.
That being said, though, they've already done enough, I think, to impress one of the people who I think could help Rick change his mind on something. That's Herschel. You already saw that at the end where he said, I think you're wrong on this one. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, could Tyreese be portrayed as more of a just heavenly figure? There's nothing wrong about the guy. He's very understanding, very polite. All the zombie killings did not take away his manners. Right. I think they'll be mainstays. I'm very interested to see what leads them to be accepted into the group. I don't see a scenario in which they're not. It just may not be Rick who ends up making the final call like you would expect. But the two random people, the two random guys in that little foursome, they're done. If they last 3 episodes, I'll be surprised.
Shane's making the call. 3 episodes or less, the white randos die.
Yes.
Okay, nice. Now, are you a fan of the comic at all? Have you read any of it?
No. I've researched it a bit. I've looked back at some of the stuff, looked at summaries and stuff, but in terms of actually reading up on the comic, not so much.
Well, just without giving too much away, Tyreese does play a pretty big role in the comic.
Yes.
And he becomes kind of a trusted number 2 of Rick. It'll be interesting to see if they do end up taking that course, or if maybe he ends up kind of, maybe rising to power a little within the group, but kind of opposite Rick. Who knows how they'll play them. But so anyways, that's interesting. And, now you've got basically the governor. It was described last night by Kevin Smith on The Talking Dead as governor had his supervillain moment.
Yes.
Actually, I think Hardwick said that. Yes, it was with the whole glass in the eye, and now obviously he's kind of maybe. Do you think he's seen the error of his ways in trying to protect these people, and now maybe just sees it as this is an opportunity to make a fighting force that happens to live under my shadow, and we can. I don't know.
I don't even necessarily think that his motives have changed, or really even that his mindset has changed. I think the necessity of secrecy that he's been playing by this entire time, killing, the National Guard or Coast Guard the first time, and then hiding that fact. I don't think he's going to be hiding many things from this point on. He's basically just going to admit this has been a dictatorship all along, you just didn't realize it, and he's going to pull far less punches at this point. Which, to be honest,
the velvet glove is coming off the iron fist.
It makes it more confusing that Andrea is still so willing to stay and accept everything that's going on, because just in the last 2 episodes, between the heads that she saw in the room, between the fact that he made Daryl and Merle about to fight to the death, and then you also throw in the fact that once she went up and those two were just talking, he admits to having Glenn and Maggie held captive. It makes you wonder why she's still staying and why she's fighting for Woodbury at this point.
Right. Well, the one thing, though, about her is she does not know where she would go to find those guys. Even if she were to leave, she'd basically just be on her own. And I think, and she said even in that part where the the angry mob wants to leave the city to try it on their own. Basically it's hell out there. You don't want to go out there.
Right.
So maybe part of that is she's kind of tethered a little bit to this town and this community, and now maybe she's starting to buy in emotionally when she kind of basically talked them down off the ledge with that rousing speech in town hall. But now moving forward the rest of the way, what are you looking forward to seeing the rest of this season?
One thing I'm looking forward to in particular is for a reason for me to like Michonne. It's really hard to like her character. It really is. Just because she's so uncooperative.
She just doesn't talk. I think she's probably had about maybe a half page of dialogue in the 6 episodes she's been in, or whatever it's been, 9 episodes.
And there's no hint as to why. That's the problem. The fact that she is so standoffish. The one thing that you notice, the difference between her time in Woodbury and her time with Rick's group, is that she's a bit more submissive, I guess. When Rick tells her to do something, she'll kind of go along with it so far. But she's still just got her own agenda in mind, and while I don't think it's anything nefarious,
it's annoying.
That's really all it is. It's because I get that she's a cool character and stuff like that.
And it's impeding the progress of the group, and I think the storytelling as a whole, by making her a deaf mute at times. And and then on top of that, at what point do you start trusting these people to talk to them a little bit? Well, after you hear, for the second time since you've been with us, and we don't even know you, we're going to heal up all your injuries, and then we're going to send you on your way after you've been cared for and fed in this apocalyptic land where, brothers kill brothers just for kicks. It's like, dude, they're fixing you up a second time, possibly a third, and then they're going to send you off into the world with a full belly. What the hell do you need to start trusting these people? Plus, you've been around them long enough.
Well, and the thing is, you think back to when she first met them. She didn't like how aggressive Rick was asking where Glenn and Maggie were when, you grabbed her leg and find them yourself. Her next sentence was basically, yeah, we could sneak in the back and we could take them. So she goes from being standoffish Michonne to recruiting them to come help her do her bidding. And she shows that she's just in it for herself when she goes off on her own during the whole thing. So I'm hoping she progresses a little bit in terms of in the personality department. One character who I've liked who's progressed a bit too is Carol.
Yes. She used to just kind of be like poor man's Jamie Lee Curtis, but now she's kind of and even
and her acceptance of Daryl leaving from the initial grieving when she first found out to accepting it later on.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens once Daryl comes back in some capacity to the group, because he will.
Well, that's my next. That was one of the things I was going to point towards. Is just how do you see this Merle Daryl thing going? It almost seems like I can't blame Rick for not taking Merle back.
Right, and I can't blame Daryl for going.
If you're worried about Michonne being a wild card, what's Merle? He's not only a wild card, but he's besides being a racist and a kind of an evil guy. This is someone who literally could slit everyone's throats in their sleep. Whereas with Michonne, you'd worry about it, but it wouldn't be too much of a fear. With Merle, it's a probability almost. You have to worry about Daryl, who already acquiesces to him to keep him in line.
Right.
And you could see maybe, and I can understand that, but I'm curious how they're going to find their way back to the group. How long will they be independents? Will they maybe get? I can't see them getting sucked back into the Woodbury scene.
The only scenario where I could see that happening is if somehow magically it happens at the right time, to where either Daryl by himself or Daryl and Merle come when there is that final clash between Woodbury and the prison.
Or they might just run into some trouble and, one or the other ends up fleeing and they, end up at the doorstep of the jail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's kind of like one of those things where, they need security and help.
Well, it's going to lead to one of the more interesting character interactions going forward, is Merle, who is the exact same as how he's always been, and the new Daryl. Because Daryl obviously is different now than he was when we first met him in season 1. So it's going to be interesting to see Daryl, who took on this whole, we're all this big family, we're not losing anyone type of mentality, versus Merle, who is Merle. He's a jerk even after getting saved. I mean, so it's going to be fun to see how long it takes Daryl to realize that. I could see them cutting ties sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And final thing, head showrunner Glenn Mazzara is off the show, and But these last few episodes were basically his last work that he did with the show. So I'll be interested to see if maybe we get to see a reason. Maybe they're in a bad position by the end of the season, or something. Some big character died. I don't know why there was a schism, why there was a break in those two camps with the group that makes the show and the head writer who's been there since the beginning, who took over after the whole Darabont fiasco. And even in The Talking Dead, Hardwick mentioned, the holidays came and then there was some crap, and it's kind of like, just basically one of the big main creative voices of the show just left within the second year in a row. They lose a showrunner. It's almost like a drummer for Spinal Tap kind of thing. So, or maybe he just saw it as he did his part and he had to leave, but I don't see why you leave something this successful unless you're kind of told to.
Absolutely.
So something, I'm wondering if we're going to see something in the story, or there's going to be a red flag that comes up where, okay, maybe this is why they had an issue with him. Maybe a beloved character dies that shouldn't have, or I don't know, but just reading the tea leaves, that's kind of like a game within the game sidebar I'll be paying attention to.
Okay, now if you had to predict a major character like that dying going forward by the end of this season, if you had to guess, who would you say?
Daryl?
Yeah, unfortunately I can see that. He's so popular.
I love him.
But if you can take out Opie and Sons of Anarchy, you can take out Daryl and Walking Dead. I mean, it's essentially the same thing.
I love that show. But if there was to be something that created a big break within the camps of the creative team with the show, maybe it would be killing off a beloved guy like him, or maybe Glenn.
Don't joke about that.
Well,
Glenn's not going anywhere for a little while. Maggie, on the other hand, I think is going to go.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll talk about that next time, I'm sure. Head of the Glenn fan club here.
I don't care. Proud member. I'm going to be wearing a Glenn shirt next week if I can find one.
We'll check back with us next week. We're going to follow this all the way through. We hope you will too.